Greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we're going to be looking at the intricately named Mountain by Haken.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
Well, maybe it's not that of an intricate name, but we are in fact looking at The Mountain by the band Haken. Now this is the first time I'm listening to Haken on this list, and we're gonna have a few more of their albums coming soon, I hope. But for now, we're gonna listen to this one and see what's best from it, and I'm gonna do that by sharing with you some of my favorite bits off the album, so enjoy.
By the cockroach and its promise, I fantasized. Adapt to this world. See the stars begin to swirl with the writings in the sky. I guess funny, I wish I could.
So, as I said, this is my first ever listen to Haken, and I am so happy that it was this album. At least I was happy, because I knew that this was the most critically acclaimed album to date. But unfortunately, I was disappointed. Yes, I was disappointed by this album. I was expecting a lot of it, but came up short at the end. And you know, that's the problem with these types of albums, because I read about it beforehand and it has really stellar reviews. Like, there's a lot of 5 stars on Prog Archives. A lot of people seem to love this album. This is the most rated album when you go on their Spotify with their most beloved song. I think it's Cockroach King on Spotify. So you know this album is the fan favorite. Still, I listened to this album, and as I went by song, I just realized that I don't like this album all that much, and I think it's not that good. Now, before I get to dissecting this album, I just have to mention that I don't think this album is bad. It's just not like the level I was expecting. It's not really good. It is a decent album and no more. And you might disagree with me, and that's fine. You can disagree, you can write down in the comments, it's fine. I'm gonna listen to what you have to say. Maybe there's more to this album than only heard, and that's a lot of the experience sometimes. So reading about this album beforehand, I saw that a lot of the critical acclaim of it comes from the fact that the band has matured in this album from their 2 previous albums. And I can totally see that coming. There's a lot of bands that they start off, kind of wanky, and then they mature into something of a sound more, accessible, familiar, and actually unique to them. And I can see that as being some good driving force for an album. It is not the only thing that matters in an album, of course. I feel like a lot of people say that the maturation that has happened on here is musically better, and I know that the bandmates themselves, they've said that they've learned how to work together better and actually produce music that they all liked. But what I find with this album is actually a really unhomogenized, mix of heavy prog and other inspirations that they took from elsewhere. Now, I'm not saying this as a fact. It just really feels like there's certain parts in this album which were really taken off of other people's performances and put on here as like a direct inspiration, and you might even say copying. So here's a rundown of how I felt this album actually goes. It feels like heavy prog all the way through. It's not metal, so I could relate to it at some, level, because I love heavy prog. I love like Rush and other stuff like that. But it seems like whenever they do heavy prog, they do the same exact thing. And yes, I'm saying they're doing the same exact thing because I didn't find a lot of differences, and it all felt kind of similar and repetitive. But then once in a while you get that, norm breaking section, which sounds like something completely different. And that's really cool, but the fact is it doesn't really mix well with everything that they did so far. It doesn't sound like it's supposed to be there. And as I said, when they do put one of those norm breaking sections, it really does sound like something else. So take for example a song like Cockroach King with its end section of the absurd and bizarre singing with the odd playing in the background, and that just really sounds like it came off of a Gentle Giant album.
By the cockroach and its promise, I fantasized.
And I don't know, something about thinking about Haken beforehand just didn't lead me to believe that I'd find anything that sounds like Gentle Giant on here, but apparently there is, and it really does sound a lot like them, like very unimaginative in some way. And there's another song, I can't really remember which song it is, but where they do an acapella. Now the acapella is really cool, but the thing is, it really does sound like something you'd find on a Moon Safari album.
This chance we must take. Strange are the days, how they seem out of place.
And yeah, I know Moon Safari are not such a big and well-known band, but they are known for their acapellas, and it just literally sounds like this came out of a Moon Safari album. So when it comes to originality, I think this album really falls short, because you have the heavy prog sections which are uninspiring in my opinion, and then you have the parts which are basically borrowed from some else. A way to have made this album better, I think in my opinion, is to amp up some two instruments which are a bit of a lackluster on here. The first one being the piano. We sometimes get the piano and the keyboards, but I'm mainly speaking about a piano at the beginning of songs, and it sounds really lovely, but it ends all too short. And I think if they would have focused more on the keys and the piano all throughout, it would have sounded a lot better. And the next, and I think the most important, instrument that's not really found all that well on here are the drums. This is heavy prog. The drums on here are basically one of the leading instruments, and I just don't feel them. There's nothing all that unique about how the drums are played on here. I'm not even sure who the drummer is, but what I do know is that he either didn't get a spotlight in this album, or he just didn't want to try. And yeah, I know that's harsh criticism, but that's what I have to do in order to actually find if I like this album or not. So yeah, if you like heavy prog, this is probably an album for you. You probably like it because it's very heavy, and most times it is nice, although it does have its quiet parts, and that's also something. But I am looking for something interesting, something unique, the original sounds. I'm looking for things that don't just repeat themselves over and over, because I want to be wowed with each and every entry on this list. And this one, it just doesn't deliver. But I would have to say that this is not a bad musically album. I think it's just not that interesting, but when it comes to the actual performance and comparing it to other things that we've heard on here, this is a pretty decent album, and if I may even say, it's actually good. Oh, and by the way, before I forget, my favorite song off of this album actually was a mix between two, but I think I chose As Death Embraces, which is a really somber song. It's really like, melancholic and sad in some way, but it also has some of those uplifting notes. And as I said, it's one of the calmer songs, and I think that's a lot saying when I choose one of the calmer songs as my favorite on what's known and categorized as a heavy prog album. So moving on to the cover analysis. Now this is a mountain. So yeah, this album is fine. It's fine. I just shit talked it a lot, but it's not a bad album. It's just not what I expected it to be, and that was kind of disappointing, but I guess I should get my hopes down in order for them to go up when needed. But all in all, I'd give this album a pretty, I'd say, okay 6 out of 10. It's not the best, it's not the worst by any means, and I'm surely looking to listen to more Haken and see how their sound matured throughout the years. So that is about it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you all tomorrow when we listen to the album Mouse by the band Aragon. But until then, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye, guys.